Now that forms the basis of our conversation. FCPA's Bonomolo is here, is an economist, and FCPA Bill Okero, former senator for Mandera. Thank you all for making time. And Mheshimiwa Bill, I'll start with you. The memo says that NIF is now being established as a limited liability company. Good idea or bad idea?
I think it's a good idea. A good idea, but subject to whatever provisions will be in law. And I am sure they borrowed from best practices in other countries. For example, the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund in India is a limited liability company. And I think there are a number of countries that have similar funds. Second, I think when you look at the fact that they want to do crowdfunding also from and get money from all other players in the institutional investors and the capital markets and so forth, then I think the infrastructure fund has to have that flexibility, and so it's not the first time that a government entity is registered as a limited liability company. Some of the institutions in which government has invested, like Safaricom, like KPLC, many of these ones are already registered as limited liabilities company. But I think for this, the important thing is the law. How the law is going to make provisions. Because here you want to raise money for infrastructure. And infrastructure is a public good that you want to do. And then you have other investors from the private sectors, playing in, into that ecosystem. So how would you then, I think then there has to be some very innovative, robust way of utilizing that, which means a public-private investment kind of thing, where then the investors also expect their return. If you got NSSF putting in money, if you got any of these other private investors putting in money. So I think, but otherwise the precedent is there, that in the other countries where those kinds of funds have been, are run because of that commercial decision that must be made. You have to make a right decision in terms of investment.
But Omolo, the people are questioning, so then who appoints the directors? Who bears the losses and the profits? Is it the taxpayer? Is it the investors? How will that work if it is a limited liability company?
I think by and large is how that is structured. The most important thing is that, one, it's the right thing to do given the state of our economy. We've virtually exhausted the legroom in terms of what we can do within our ordinary budgetary space. And therefore, the reality is additional debt can only bankrupt this nation. We are more or less at the borderline. But now, how then do we structure it? So the legal structure of the fund must be able to guarantee that every sector of the economy, every sector in terms of the Kenyan people have capacity and ability to be involved. The legislature has to step in and bring in the right law. So as it is now, it is a good thing. Those fears that members of the public have in terms of could it be abused, I think that can be ring-fenced. Well-run institutions, by and large, will definitely be profitable over long term. So it's all about the structure and the governance framework that is there, the manner in which the leadership of that board will be set up without political interference, getting the best brains into that space. I know that could be a big challenge because you'll struggle to find any public institution where you can point that this is being done well. But of course, if we follow other models in countries such as Botswana that has done it very well, it is possible to infuse both public sector-led board members. That is, the government can be able to bring in board members who are competitively recruited, but also because there's an element of other investment arms or partners coming in, they will also have an interest in the board, and therefore they will also bring the best foot forward. So at the end of it all, if the structure is good and there is proper grounding and benchmarking with best case scenarios globally, then that should not be a challenge. I think it should be able to work.
Should be able to work. Mheshimiwa Biro, with this issue where nobody trusts anyone in this country, shouldn't the governance framework come first before declaring it a limited liability company? Because many people are wondering, a practical question would be then, so who bears the losses?
You see, the thing with this administration, one of the major weaknesses is the hurry. They always seem to be in a hurry. Something like this would have been preceded by the policy framework. Then you go to the legislative aspect of it and have a very robust discussion about it, and get the legislation and everything, the policy in place. Then all those questions would have been answered. But even having said that, however, they are saying they're going to do that now next. And so there'll be a lot of room for input into that process and see how that works. But there's no one in this country who doubts what is the elephant in the room in Kenya. It's corruption, it's governance. Even if you want to go up to Singapore, unless you deal with that issue of integrity in public service, corruption, you can't succeed. You can collect all the money you want in the world. But there's we must also admit that institutions that have had public-private, with the private sector kind of having that lead, like Safaricom, has succeeded very well. Government had more than 51%, and everything was, it was one of the best-run companies, the most valuable company in Eastern Central Africa. So they can. I mean, we have people. So I think, in my view, the concept, that's the direction we need to go, because there's no other way you can get out of the mess we're in. You know what Inondo was saying, it's really, it's beside the point, because the issue is, there's no other way you can tell this country, I want to have an expenditure of 4.5 trillion, but my revenue is less than 3 trillion. Definitely you're going to borrow 1 trillion. And you're passing that budget every day. And so I think the issue is we must find an innovative way. And I like the way this government is thinking out of the box. They came up with a lot of those things, but some didn't work. Like, a good example is the Hustler Fund. When it was rolled out, it had that big dream of lifting, but, people are back to their usual private sector ones. So it didn't quite achieve the objective. So, but being innovative, the PPP is one of the things we thought about many years ago, from the time Kibaki came up with 2030, public-private partnership. One way of not relying on debt. These are the ones that they have come up with. Also, brilliant idea. There are countries, Angola, Ghana, Nigeria, your country like Indonesia, they've done very well on this kind of sovereign wealth fund, where you have surplus from your budget. You have money from your natural resources, oil, and those things. And then you have got money from sale of state assets, where, all these things are put together. And the whole idea is to leverage on that fund now and get at least 10 times that amount, the way they are suggesting. So the issue of governance, no doubt in Kenya, is critical. So we'll see the next few days what they're going to do in terms of the...
So it's still a grey area. But Omolo, for people who say that this is akin to selling the nation to private entities, is that a valid statement?
No, I don't think that's a valid statement. The reality is, first, we acknowledge where we are. Then, two, we are also leveraging on, I think there's a section within our constitution, I think some article that talks about intergenerational wealth generation, and therefore we have a duty to take care of the future generation to come. But then again, the most important thing in this is, how do you structure it? People can say, of course, with the controversy around Safaricom, the thinking in the minds of many is that we are selling Safaricom to put that money into this investment, this fund, and therefore, did we get value there? Is this going to be abused? But I think the key thing is the policy is already there. Now, I'm glad Cabinet has approved that. Now, the next level is to go to Parliament through a draft bill. That bill then should address all these concerns that Kenyans are raising. And the most important thing, we are not reinventing a wheel.
Correct.
This thing has been done elsewhere, and it has worked. So there are benchmarks we can use. And an example is here. We have, in the last 2 years, increased our national savings by over almost 400 billion. That is money sitting at NSSF. That institution could be a key partner in this journey. But again, we must also ask ourselves, an institution has doubled its value in 2 years. What have we done to look at the governance structure, for example, of NSSF? How does it invest those 400 billion plus that has come in? Are they still using the old models? So these are the conversations we need to look at, so that we tighten every bolt and nut to ensure that we ring-fence the public resources from abuse, but most importantly, this is a faster way to accelerate development, but also ensure that we do it in a manner that is not opaque, that is subject to public participation. And I invite Kenyans and parliamentarians to make the process of debating this bill as robust as possible so that all the difficult questions can be asked. But also to be careful so that we do not end up with a conversation where facts are then replaced with twisted propaganda, like I've seen in some of the stories coming out around even the Safaricom shares that have been divested. So that is a risk we need to look out for.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. FCPA has Hesbon Omolo, economist, and FCPA Bill Okero, former senator for Mandera. We'll see what the policy framework looks like and discuss that further. Taking a quick break here on the Monday Report. We're back with much more in just a short while. Don't go too far.